Chosen one, January 5th, 6th, 7th are God-assigned days. Ignoring these dates will cost you. There are moments in time that are not random, not accidental, and not part of the ordinary flow of days that pass without meaning. These moments are placed, marked, and charged long before most people ever notice them. Chosen one, January 5th, 6th, and 7th are not just dates on a calendar. They are assignments. They are checkpoints. They are spiritual intersections where awareness, obedience, and alignment determine what opens and what quietly closes. Many will wake up on these days and treat them like any other. They will scroll, complain, rush, distract themselves, and move through the hours unaware that something was offered and ignored. Others will feel an unexplainable pressure, a pull in their spirit, a sense that something matters more than usual. This message is for those people. This is not meant to scare you, but it is meant to wake you up. Ignoring these days does not bring instant punishment, but it does carry a cost. And that cost is delay, missed clarity, and lost momentum in areas that were ready to move. Before going deeper, stay with this message until the very end, because every section builds on the one before it, and understanding comes in layers. And write your warmest wishes in the comments, and include the number 144, not as superstition, but as a conscious act of intention, alignment, and energetic agreement. This is the only moment where wishes are spoken here, because this chapter is about recognizing when the universe responds to focused awareness, when intention is amplified through timing, and when clarity replaces confusion. After this, the message moves fully into responsibility, action, and recognition. Now, chosen one, press the hype button, like this video, subscribe if you haven't subscribed to the channel, and let's start. January 5th is the day of recognition. This is when truth presses against denial. On this day, you are confronted with what you already know, but may have been avoiding. It is not dramatic on the surface. It doesn't arrive with noise or spectacle. It arrives as a quiet realization, a sudden clarity, a thought that keeps returning no matter how many times you try to push it away. This day is about seeing clearly without filters. Patterns reveal themselves. People reveal themselves. You may notice who drains you, what no longer fits, or which direction you've been walking that no longer matches who you are becoming. January 5th does not demand action yet. It demands honesty. Ignoring this day often looks like distraction, numbing, overworking, or convincing yourself that nothing is wrong. The cost of ignoring it is carrying confusion longer than necessary. When recognition is delayed, lessons repeat, and what could have been resolved gently later requires force. January 6th is the day of decision. Once truth is recognized, a response is required. This day carries weight because neutrality is no longer an option. Even doing nothing is a decision, and on this day, inaction is registered as resistance. You may feel inner tension, restlessness, or a strong urge to choose differently than before. January 6th asks one question: will you align with what you know, or will you protect what is familiar? Many people feel overwhelmed on this day because decisions feel final. But in reality, this day is about direction, not perfection. A small but sincere shift is enough. A boundary, a commitment, a release, a refusal to continue something that has already expired. Ignoring January 6th often leads to stagnation. Life feels paused. Progress feels blocked. Opportunities seem close but unreachable. This is not punishment. It is consequence. Momentum requires movement. January 7th is the day of activation. This is when what you recognized and decided begins to take form. Energy moves quickly on this day. Conversations happen unexpectedly. Ideas crystallize. Doors open or close with surprising speed. You may feel tired, yet focused, emotional, yet grounded. January 7th is not about forcing outcomes. It is about allowing alignment to express itself through action. This day often tests trust. Things may not unfold the way you imagined, but they unfold in the way that matches your highest trajectory. Ignoring this day often looks like procrastination, doubt, or overthinking. The cost is missed synchronization. Timing matters, and when alignment is present, even simple actions carry amplified impact. These 3 days work together. Recognition without decision leads to frustration. Decision without activation leads to anxiety. Activation without recognition leads to chaos. This is why they are grouped, and this is why awareness across all 3 matters. Chosen ones often feel pressure around specific dates without knowing why. It's because your sensitivity is higher. You are more responsive to spiritual timing. You notice shifts before others do. This doesn't make you better. It makes you responsible. Responsibility is not about burden, but about stewardship of awareness. Many people will mock messages like this. That is expected. Not everyone is meant to recognize timing. Some people move through life reacting only to visible consequences. Others are guided by inner signals long before anything appears externally. If you are listening to this and feel a sense of seriousness rather than fear, you are in the second group. Fear repels alignment. Seriousness invites clarity. Ignoring God-assigned moments does not bring instant loss, but it does create subtle erosion. Confidence weakens. Intuition dulls. Motivation fades. People often say they feel off without knowing why. More often than not, they ignored a moment that asked for attention. January 5th, 6th, and 7th are not about rituals, predictions, or external validation. They are about inner response. How you think, how you choose, how you act when no one is watching. These days may stir emotions. You may feel nostalgic, restless, inspired, or unsettled. Let that happen. Suppressing awareness is what creates discomfort. Observing it brings peace. You are not required to make dramatic life changes, but you are required to be real with yourself. Honesty is the currency of alignment. If you feel resistance to this message, examine it without judgment. Resistance often appears when truth challenges comfort. Comfort is not bad, but it cannot lead when growth is required. Growth always asks for attention first, then courage, then trust. Nothing here is meant to control you. This message does not take away your freedom. It reveals it. You are always free to ignore moments of significance, and many people do. Life will still move forward. Days will still pass. But for those who feel the quiet pull, for those who sense that something unseen is asking for attention, honoring these days can shift timelines in ways that are not immediately visible but deeply real. What once took months to understand can become clear in moments. What felt delayed can suddenly regain momentum. Awareness has a way of shortening cycles, and alignment has a way of accelerating outcomes. When you recognize what is being offered and respond with intention, progress no longer feels forced. It feels natural, almost inevitable. There are people who experience time differently. They feel pressure before events happen, clarity before circumstances change, and inner movement before the outer world reflects it. Spiritual assignments rarely announce themselves loudly. They appear as subtle signals, repeated thoughts, emotional shifts, and an inner knowing that something matters more than it seems. When awareness is embraced instead of postponed, confusion loses its grip. Energy reorganizes. Direction sharpens. What once felt heavy begins to move. This is what happens when you stop delaying what your spirit has already recognized. Time does not move the same way for everyone. Some people live entirely by clocks, deadlines, and visible results. Others feel shifts long before anything changes on the surface. If you are listening to this, there is a strong chance you belong to the second group. Chosen ones often sense movement before it becomes physical. They feel endings before they happen, pressure before decisions arrive, and clarity before proof appears. This is not imagination. It is sensitivity to timing. When you are aligned with purpose, your awareness extends beyond the present moment. You pick up on signals that are not yet obvious to others. And this is why certain days carry more weight for you than for the rest of the world. January 5th, 6th, and 7th are heavy, not because of superstition, but because they sit at a turning point. These are days where inner time and outer time briefly sync. When that happens, awareness becomes powerful. Thoughts have more clarity. Emotions carry information. Intuition becomes louder. This is also why distraction feels more tempting during these moments. The mind tries to escape what the spirit is ready to confront. Many people feel unusually tired, restless, or unfocused during spiritually charged periods, not because something is wrong, but because something is asking to be noticed. Spiritual assignments almost never begin with physical change. They begin internally. A shift in perspective, a sudden discomfort with old habits, a loss of interest in things that once mattered. People often misinterpret this phase as confusion or burnout, when in reality it is preparation. The old structure is loosening to make room for something more aligned. January 5th brings awareness of this internal shift. January 6th asks whether you will cooperate with it. January 7th tests whether you trust it enough to move forward without needing full confirmation. Chosen ones often delay action because they want certainty. They want signs, validation, or guarantees. But timing does not work that way. When awareness comes, it is already the sign. Waiting too long turns clarity into doubt. The longer awareness is postponed, the louder life has to speak. What begins as a gentle nudge can turn into repeated obstacles, emotional fatigue, or a sense of being stuck. This is not because you are failing, but because you are resisting a moment that requires response. Ignoring spiritually significant days doesn't cause dramatic collapse. Instead, it creates subtle misalignment. You may notice that effort increases, but results decrease. You try harder, yet feel less fulfilled. Relationships feel strained without clear reasons. Motivation comes and goes. This happens when internal timing and external action fall out of sync. January 5th, 6th, and 7th are opportunities to realign them, not through force, but through honesty and presence. Awareness, when embraced, has immediate effects. You begin to see connections between past choices and current outcomes. You understand why certain doors closed. You recognize why certain paths felt blocked. This understanding brings peace, not regret. Regret belongs to those who believe the past could have been different without growth. Awareness belongs to those who see the past as instruction. These days are not about judging yourself for what you didn't do before. They are about choosing differently now. Many chosen ones struggle with the idea of responsibility. They confuse it with pressure or burden. But responsibility, in this context, is simply the ability to respond. When awareness comes, you are being trusted with information. How you respond determines whether that trust deepens or fades. January 6th is especially important here because it exposes hesitation. Hesitation is not always fear. Sometimes it is attachment. Attachment to comfort. Attachment to familiarity. Attachment to versions of yourself that no longer fit. January 7th often brings movement, but not always in the way you expect. Sometimes it brings confirmation. Sometimes it brings closure. Sometimes it brings an unexpected redirection. What matters is not control, but cooperation. When you cooperate with timing, resistance dissolves. Even difficult changes feel lighter when they are aligned. Even losses make sense when they are understood as transitions rather than failures. Chosen ones often feel alone during these periods because others do not see what they see. This isolation is temporary. It exists to strengthen discernment. When you stop seeking external agreement and begin trusting internal clarity, confidence stabilizes. You no longer need everyone to understand your choices. You only need to know why you are making them. As these days pass, what you do afterward matters just as much as what you do during them. Awareness without integration fades. Integration means carrying the clarity forward, acting in alignment, speaking honestly, adjusting behavior, letting go where needed. This is how awareness becomes transformation rather than a passing insight. Time will continue to move. Calendars will turn. But moments like these leave an imprint. When honored, they become reference points. You look back and realize that something shifted, even if you couldn't fully explain it at the time. This is how spiritual growth actually works, quietly, internally, and steadily reshaping the direction of your life. In the next continuation, the focus will move deeper into the cost of postponement, why repeated cycles appear when lessons are delayed, and how alignment changes not just decisions, but identity itself. Postponement is rarely loud. It doesn't announce itself as refusal. Most of the time, it disguises itself as logic, timing, or the belief that there will be a better moment later. Chosen ones are especially skilled at postponement because they can sense depth and complexity. They understand that decisions have consequences, so they wait, analyze, and reconsider. But there is a difference between discernment and delay. Discernment listens and then moves. Delay listens and then negotiates with comfort. When spiritually assigned moments are postponed, the lesson does not disappear. It repeats each time with more intensity. Cycles exist for one reason: to teach what was not integrated the first time. When awareness arrives and action does not follow, life reorganizes to present the same message in a different form. A relationship ends and a similar one begins. A job feels unfulfilling and the next one carries the same frustration. Motivation rises and falls in predictable waves. People often ask why the same situations keep showing up. The answer is not bad luck. It is incomplete response. January 5th, 6th, and 7th are moments where cycles can be interrupted, but interruption requires participation. The cost of postponement is not always visible externally. On the outside, life may appear functional. Responsibilities are met. Conversations happen. Progress seems steady enough. But internally, something feels unresolved. there is a quiet dissatisfaction that doesn't fully go away, a sense that potential is being managed instead of lived. This is the cost that matters most, because it slowly shapes identity. Over time, postponement turns into self-doubt. Self-doubt turns into lowered expectations. And lowered expectations quietly redefine who you believe you are allowed to be. Identity is not formed by what you think about yourself, but by what you consistently choose. When awareness comes and is ignored, the message the subconscious receives is that comfort is more important than truth. This doesn't make you weak, it makes you human. But chosen ones are not meant to live permanently in that state. They are meant to outgrow it. Each spiritually significant moment is an invitation to update identity, to move from who you were to who you are becoming. Ignoring that invitation keeps you tied to older versions of yourself that no longer fit. Many people mistake alignment for ease. They believe that if something is meant for them, it will feel effortless from the beginning. This belief causes confusion when aligned decisions feel uncomfortable. Growth often feels destabilizing at first because it disrupts familiar patterns. January 6th is especially uncomfortable for this reason. Decisions made on this day often challenge existing structures. They require letting go of explanations, roles, or attachments that once provided security. But discomfort is not a sign of misalignment. Resistance is. When cycles repeat, they usually escalate. What once felt like mild dissatisfaction becomes frustration. What once felt like hesitation becomes fear. What once felt like clarity becomes pressure. This escalation is not punishment, it is communication. Life speaks louder when it is not heard. January 7th often acts as a turning point in this escalation. Either momentum is restored through aligned action, or the cycle continues with greater intensity later. Chosen ones often feel guilt or they do not respond immediately. They replay moments, wondering if they missed something. This rumination is unnecessary. Awareness is not meant to produce guilt. It is meant to produce movement. If you recognize that you delayed before, the response is not regret. It is presence now. Alignment is always available in the present moment, but some moments carry more leverage than others. January 5th, 6th, and 7th are high-leverage moments. Another hidden cost of postponement is emotional numbness. When intuition is repeatedly ignored, it quiets down. Not because it disappears, but because it adapts. It stops interrupting as often. People describe this as feeling disconnected, unmotivated, or lost. Reconnection does not require dramatic change. It requires listening again and responding, even in small ways. A single aligned decision can restore trust between you and your inner guidance. Identity shifts when you prove to yourself that you can act on what you know. Confidence is not built through success alone. It is built through self-trust. Every time you honor awareness, self-trust increases. Every time you postpone without reason, it weakens slightly. Over time, this difference becomes noticeable. Some people move decisively, even in uncertainty. Others remain stuck, even when clarity is present. The difference is not intelligence or talent. It is response history. These days also reveal where energy has been leaking. Obligations that no longer serve you. Conversations that drain rather than support. Habits that once helped but now hinder. Awareness exposes these leaks without judgment. You are not asked to fix everything at once. You are asked to see clearly. Seeing clearly is the beginning of change. There is also a deeper layer to postponement that few people talk about. Fear of expansion. Growth doesn't just remove what no longer fits. it introduces responsibility for what does. Becoming more aligned often means being more visible, more decisive, and more accountable. Some people unconsciously delay alignment because they sense that stepping fully into themselves will change how others relate to them. This fear is understandable, but it cannot be allowed to lead. January 5th, 6th, and 7th are not about becoming someone new overnight. They are about shedding what is no longer accurate. Identity is refined, not replaced. You are not losing yourself. You are clarifying yourself. When this clarification is delayed, confusion fills the gap. When it is embraced, direction emerges. As awareness deepens, you may notice a shift in priorities. What once felt urgent feels less important. What once felt optional feels necessary. This reordering is natural. It is how alignment reorganizes life from the inside out. Fighting this process creates friction. Allowing it creates flow. The repetition of cycles ends when the lesson is integrated, not when circumstances change. Circumstances change because lessons are integrated. This is why waiting for the right situation rarely works. The situation adjusts after the internal shift, not before. The weight of these days is not meant to overwhelm you. It is meant to focus you. Focus reduces noise. Noise creates doubt. Doubt fuels postponement. When focus is restored, movement follows naturally. What happens next depends not on destiny, but on response. Awareness has already done its part. The rest is participation. There is a point where awareness stops being informational and starts being transformational. That point is reached when insight changes behavior. Until then, awareness remains potential. January 5th, 6th, and 7th exist as thresholds where this shift can happen more efficiently. These days don't add pressure. They remove excuses. They narrow attention. They bring you face to face with what matters and strip away distractions that usually soften the truth. This is why these moments can feel intense, even when nothing dramatic is happening externally. One of the most misunderstood aspects of alignment is action. Many people believe action must be large, visible, or immediately life-changing. In reality, aligned action is often quiet. It might be a decision you stop explaining, a boundary you hold without argument, a truth you finally admit to yourself. These small actions carry disproportionate weight because they are taken at the right time. Timing magnifies impact. January 7th, in particular, is about timely movement. Not rushing, but responding while clarity is still fresh. When action follows awareness, energy reorganizes quickly. You may notice mental clarity improve almost immediately. Decisions feel simpler, not because life is easy, but because confusion has been reduced. You stop negotiating with yourself. Inner conflict decreases. This internal coherence is what creates momentum. Momentum is not speed. It is consistency without resistance. Many chosen ones struggle with perfectionism, which often disguises itself as patience. They wait until they feel completely ready, completely certain, or completely healed. But readiness is not a prerequisite for alignment. Willingness is. Healing often happens through movement, not before it. January 6th confronts perfectionism directly. It asks whether you are waiting to avoid discomfort or waiting because timing truly isn't right. The difference is subtle but important. Another key shift that happens during these days is the redefinition of control. Control is often mistaken for stability. People cling to routines, roles, or identities because they feel predictable. But predictability is not the same as alignment. True stability comes from adaptability grounded in clarity. When you are aligned, you can handle change without losing yourself. When you are misaligned, even stability feels fragile. January 5th exposes false stability. January 6th challenges attachment to it. January 7th introduces movement that tests whether you trust yourself without it. As action begins, resistance often appears from unexpected places. People may question your choices. Old patterns may resurface. Doubt may try to regain control. This is not a sign that you are wrong. It is a sign that identity is shifting. Every time identity evolves, the old version tries to reassert itself one last time. Awareness helps you recognize this without being pulled back into it. Alignment also changes how you experience effort. Effort doesn't disappear, but it becomes cleaner. You stop expending energy on what no longer matters. You stop over-explaining. You stop chasing validation. This conservation of energy is often mistaken for withdrawal, but it is actually refinement. Chosen ones often burn out not because they do too much, but because they do too much that isn't aligned. These days mark a point where energy can be redirected more effectively. Another important outcome of alignment is discernment. You begin to distinguish between what is urgent and what is important. Many distractions feel urgent, but few are important. Awareness sharpens this distinction. When discernment improves, life feels less overwhelming. You no longer feel pulled in multiple directions. Direction consolidates. Focus returns. January 7th often reveals consequences quickly. This can be encouraging or uncomfortable. Aligned choices tend to produce immediate internal relief, even if external results take time. Misaligned choices tend to produce immediate tension, even if they seem beneficial on the surface. Learning to trust this internal feedback is part of growth. Your body and emotions become guides rather than obstacles. As alignment deepens, identity continues to shift. You may notice changes in how you speak, what you tolerate, and what you prioritize. This is not regression or arrogance. It is clarity. Clarity often looks like simplicity. You need less to feel grounded. You require fewer explanations. You become more selective without becoming closed. One of the quieter transformations that happens during these periods is the release of unnecessary urgency. When you know you are aligned, you stop feeling like you are running out of time. Time feels supportive rather than threatening. This is especially important for chosen ones who often feel pressured to catch up or make up for perceived delays. Alignment dissolves that pressure by restoring trust in timing. Action taken during spiritually significant moments tends to echo forward. Decisions made with awareness create patterns of self-trust. Patterns of self-trust create confidence. Confidence creates consistency. Consistency reshapes life. This is how small actions taken at the right time produce large outcomes over time. There is also an element of surrender involved. Surrender is not giving up. It is releasing the need to control outcomes. When you act in alignment, you allow results to unfold without micromanaging them. This reduces anxiety and increases resilience. You stop interpreting every challenge as a sign of failure. Challenges become information rather than threats. As these shifts take hold, you may find yourself less reactive. Situations that once triggered strong emotional responses feel manageable. This is not emotional suppression. It is emotional regulation through understanding. When you know why you are doing something, reactions lose their power. Alignment is not a destination. It is a practice. January 5th, 6th, and 7th serve as anchors for that practice. They remind you what it feels like to be clear, decisive, and responsive. You carry that memory forward, using it as a reference when future decisions arise. What follows these days is not certainty, but stability. Not control, but confidence. Not perfection, but direction. This is the foundation upon which longer-term transformation is built. After alignment begins to take root, something subtle but powerful happens. Your relationship with uncertainty changes. Uncertainty no longer feels like a threat that must be eliminated. It becomes a space where growth unfolds. Chosen ones often fear uncertainty because they sense deeply and imagine outcomes vividly. But alignment teaches you that uncertainty is not absence of direction. It is evidence that direction is still unfolding. January 5th, 6th, and 7th recalibrate how you stand in the unknown. Instead of bracing against it, you learn to move with it. One of the clearest signs that alignment is active is the way your attention shifts. You stop obsessing over what others are doing. Comparison loses its grip. Not because you stop noticing others, but because your inner reference point becomes stronger. You measure progress by integrity rather than speed. This shift brings relief. The constant pressure to perform, prove, or keep up begins to fade. What replaces it is a quiet confidence rooted in self-consistency, and in that quiet confidence, you finally begin to move forward without needing to look sideways, trusting your own path because it now feels unmistakably yours.